organism. We want to take in oxygen, get rid of carbon dioxide. We've been talking about like the route through. So we started the nasal cavity. What's so great about inhaling air through your nose?
It filters it.
It filters it. Yes?
It warms it.
It warms it up.
You can smell stuff.
You can smell stuff, good, bad, otherwise, right? Yes?
Smelling helps with your tasting.
Smelling helps with your tasting. It does. And then also, moistens it. So it basically adds a little moisture to it, which helps later on for diffusion when we get to the respiratory surface. Excuse me. What's the name for the little grape-like structures that are the only respiratory surface, gas exchange surface for humans? Yes, the alveoli. Alveolus, singular, alveoli, plural. That's the only place. So even if you're inhaling something, your body is only picking up the oxygen when it makes its way all the way to those little grapes in the lungs. You're not getting oxygen from it if it's in your larynx, in your trachea, all of those other things. Those are basically just passageways to get it there. Yes?
Is trachea the thing? Well, I saw like you see in movies where they take like a straw or something, you can put it there if someone's choking and it lets them breathe.
Yeah, so there's like it's called a tracheotomy basically. So what happens, the question is about like, can you poke a hole in someone's trachea and help them breathe? Okay, let's leave that to the medical professionals. But technically, yeah, it's basically putting it in their air. The problem is, if it's a matter of like their muscles working still, that's okay. But basically, that would be like when people do a tracheotomy, it's because something is blocked higher up on that. So like up in the larynx or something weird going on with the epiglottis or whatever else. So it's basically bypassing all this top stuff and just starting in on the trachea. Not great for breathing for people, as we're going to get into here in a moment though, because you need to have your lungs, basically to expand our lungs, we need to have our muscles between our ribs contract and lift your rib cage up, and your diaphragm contract and flatten out. So basically kind of work like a bellows and pull air in. So if that person is not doing that part, then you'll need to push air in through the trachea. Yeah, let's not trach people, okay? Let's just, oh my gosh, I can just imagine. All right, so we watched the person's vocal cords the other day. We won't check that out again. Oh shoot, I think I just clicked it, sorry. I think we're gonna pass it today, although I gotta see if I can find it. Last night I was, what do you call it, doom scrolling? I don't even know. I was just sitting there, chilled, tired, looking at stuff on social media, and I saw them do a laryngoscope on a death metal singer. And I will see if I can find it again, because it was crazy. Like, some of it looked normal, like what she was doing, but then a lot of like the weird guttural sounds. There was like a ton of saliva going on and strange things. And I thought of you guys, but I was also really tired. It was like after I scrolled past that. I mean, that's kind of weird that that's what's popping up on my social media stuff. Strange voice things going on. Yes?
So this is going to be slightly off topic, but
I just talked about death metal guys, so you're fine. Go ahead.
So, you know how if people smoke, it turns the lungs like black?
Yeah.
What does vaping do to the lungs, like in terms of health?
What does vaping do? Let's just roll for a second. We're going to get to some of this other stuff. Let's talk about vaping. Okay. Normal lung. Vaping lung. You're still, and I have someone disagree with me almost every class when we talk about this. That's okay. We can agree to disagree. Vaping is not good for your lungs. Okay? There's smoking and there's vaping. So when people are smoking, remember I said it'd be better if people smoke through their nose instead, because you'd have all that filtering and whatever else. So for smoking, you're bypassing all of this important filtering stuff and just getting it right to the back of your throat and your trachea. We actually have, along in our trachea, these little tiny hairs. They're like cilia. And basically, when you get something that you don't want to have down in your trachea, before it makes its way to your lungs, you have this like coughing sensation, right? And there are actually these little hairs that catch whatever the goop is and the stuff that you don't want to have go down into your lungs in those little hairs. And then you cough and you push it up a little further, and it gets caught in the hairs. A little further, it gets caught in the hairs. People who smoke and vape, they kill those hairs. So then there's something called a smoker's cough, and that's basically, you can hear it's like a rattling sound, sort of a cough down in their lungs. It's like they don't have those little hairs to catch the junk, and so it's not making its way up, whatever the bad stuff is. Also, I'll get to you in just a sec. So when you smoke, you're putting in all of the substances that you just, have going straight to your lungs without any of the filtering stuff and whatever else. And our lungs are pretty fragile and pretty sensitive because they have that respiratory surface that's only one cell thick. That's where you're getting your oxygen from. It's not good stuff. Vaping, you're still putting things in your body. You're still introducing something there. It's also usually hot. Like there's a temperature to it too. There's a difference between slightly warming things up in your nose and then like cooking things as you're vaping stuff too. So I have another slide also. What was your comment or question?
How long does it take to if someone smoked for 15 years, how long would it take for their lungs to go back?
Go back? That's a great question. I don't know. My father-in-law is a surgeon. He smoked a pipe. Like when my husband was like a kid, like he smoked a pipe. There's all these pictures of him smoking a pipe when he was like, my husband was a little guy. And then he stopped, and I can't remember. I don't have like a nice number for you, but it's like 10, 15 years, and you've still done some damage. Our cells are always replacing themselves, so it's never, if you are someone who smokes or vapes, it's not too late to stop doing that, right? It's a beneficial thing for your lungs to stop doing that, but do know that the choices you make as a younger person, we get this one body, good, bad, or otherwise, and the things that you do to it going along can have long-lasting effects. I don't know what the exact turnover information is. Yes, right here.
My grandpa's brother, Uncle Lou, that dude smoked like 2 packs every day, and he did that for like 60 years, and he lived to 90. I bet you if you had cut his lungs open, they would have been like raisins, dude. Because that dude was like, when he talked, like near the end, like he was just like a spray paint can.
So the comment is like someone who smoked, what, 60, 70, 80 years, like who knows how long he'd smoked, 70 years, probably really beaten up lungs. But this is for vaping, because a lot of us have learned that smoking gives you, it's like black lungs, or even like, so my father-in-law, his dad was a coal miner. He died of black lung disease because they're just inhaling the particulates, basically, as they're doing that. But a lot of people, and I think advertising is so crazy. I'm impressed by people who can come up with advertising things. But vaping is not good for your lungs either, kind of a thing at all. Let me show you one more thing, and then we can I'll answer your questions and we'll get back to it. But I have an article here, basically, and this is talking about, and it's not the best picture. I think I have the close-up of the picture here, but this is my source, right? You always want to have, be able to cite your sources. So this is from the Journal of Molecular Sciences. This is where I stole their picture from. So we have on one side, and I realize for my online folks, so we have over on this side, we've got vaping and the things that you're adding into your lungs. And then over here, we have smoking cigarettes. Now, I know that there's a whole variety in and of that. I am not an expert. I do not smoke. I have a hard enough time climbing up a hill, okay, because of my being out of shape. I don't want to, myself, I just don't do that. But so there's all these different heavy metals and what can happen. And it's weird. Most of the time when we are breathing, you are not using your whole lung capacity. When you are sitting here listening to my lecture, watching this lecture at home, you are likely using your upper few lobes of your lungs because your body is pretty efficient. In the trachea, so here's the trachea, and then it goes down, and these are the bronchi and the bronchioles and so on. There are actually cartilaginous plates, just little chunks of cartilage, and it closes off passageways that you don't need at that time. So when you are breathing differently, because let's say you're hiking up that mountain, or running a race, or swimming hard, or doing some athletic thing, or whatever else, those plates shift in your lungs, and it opens to access more of the lobes of your lungs. But most of the time, as we're doing our daily life, most of us are just breathing the top section of your lung. Unless you are doing thoughtful breathing where you're really pulling in a whole bunch of air, you'll feel that it feels like you're super expanding, and that's because you're getting more into the lungs. Kind of a wild thing. So yes, there's more harmful stuff that's happening with cigarette smoke. Still harmful things going on for vaping, and then there's a key down here. Pretty much a lot of it is the same. There's lots of inflammation, cell death, epigenetic modifications. We didn't talk too much about this when we talked about DNA. Epigenetic modifications means that in your DNA, there are little attachments to our DNA. And those little attachments, it's sometimes called methylation. It's a methyl group. That's a chemistry term. Basically, we have our genes. You have your cookbook, but sometimes your body alters which genes it turns on and turns off. That is epigenetics. You have your set of DNA, but there are things throughout your life that you can do, that you can control, that can change which genes get turned on and turned off and expressed. And it's wild. Stress, chemical factors, what you're eating, all sorts of different things can tinker with that a little bit. So this is actually tinkering with the genes of the lungs. Yes?
Does cannabis fit more into the cigarette smoke then?
Cannabis would fit more into the cigarette smoke, probably not the heavy metals and things like that. It depends on what is being added in there. Cannabis, along with nicotine, which is added to a lot of, of course, the cigarettes and the vaping stuff, those do chemical messengers for other parts of your body as well. So this is literally just the surface of the lungs and those organs. But cannabis, pot, for those of us that don't know, or cigarettes, all of those things are damaging. But basically, you're inhaling smoke into your lungs. So that's something that your body is trying to filter out. There's nothing beneficial for your lungs about that. Oh, I have a couple more questions, and then we will do some more other things. But this is always a hot topic, and that's okay. I'd rather you ask, and we can talk about it now. Yes?
So I'm wondering, my mom smokes, my sister vapes, and my cousin vapes, and I've been trying to get them to quit for years. How do I approach that kind of topic?
So the question is, my family members who smoke or vape, how do I get them to quit? You don't. Sorry to say it. That person has to decide for themselves. and this is me telling you as like Stephanie, not as like your professor, okay? But like, we can all like have helpful things, you know, for our family members, but it has to be up to that individual person to like decide what they are going to do. So you can be supportive of like other, you know, good choices, like be a good friend, be a good family member. But I don't know. One of my most favorite uncles died of lung cancer, and he had smoked his whole life, and his kids would hide his cigarettes. They would destroy it. They would make posters and signs for him, and it wasn't about him choosing that over them. It was just like his own thing because he was addicted to it. So it's not a reflection on them not thinking that you're saying good things either. It's like, and this is again me just talking like as a person, not as your professor. But I think it's up to them to make the choice. Yes.
So have you seen like the vape bars, but they're not really vapes, but they're like the caffeine and like the caffeine bars and everything. You also smoke with that. Do you think that would have probably the same effects as this one?
So I don't know anything about vape. I've never vaped. I'm just going to tell you, I had one clove cigarette when I was 19 and I threw up. So like, I will tell you, I'm just being honest with you guys. So I am not the expert in this stuff. I will always try to be honest with you about how, like my take on things. So I've had students, this is always people are like, well, what about the ones with caffeine, or there's some that have water in it, and then it's to help people get off of smoking. Any progress of like doing less of this damage to your lungs is great. You're still adding stuff that doesn't belong there in your lungs. So it's not like a naturally occurring out and about thing. Now, I realize as somebody who's overweight, do I love cookies and brownies and things like that, and is that doing things to my body that it shouldn't be? For sure. So I'm not trying to be like super preachy about those kinds of things. I just want you to know that there's some junk going into your lungs when you're doing these things. Did you have a comment or question?
I'm trying to think because like I remember at Brown, like I was talking to him a year before he was super normal, and then like I talked to him again and he started smoking weed. Doesn't that cause like IQ loss or like some damage to the brain? Because I remember I was talking to him and he just seemed like not only dumber, but just like more immature because he'd just been doing it for like a whole year, and I could tell, and he was like, oh.
So there's all right. So
like,
I had a question about pot and like weed and your IQ and brain functions and things like that. I am not the expert on this. Also, the reason why people smoke pot is because it has other effects on their body. And so those impair, like should be driving a car, should be doing all these different things like that. So I don't know, you're damaging things. Also, by the way, whenever you're smoking anything, you're making sure that you're basically limiting the delivery of oxygen to your brain. You are limiting the delivery of oxygen to your brain. That can't be good. All right, we're going to carry on, okay, with some other stuff. But it's okay. I'm happy to have this chat with you. I am not a healthcare expert, though. I'm your lowly biology teacher who knows bits about weird things, okay? But just to show you some of this stuff, to kind of check it out, keep it in perspective. All right, let's go back to our other thing here. Whoa, too far. Not that one again. Okay. So as we're making our way on down, you're going to pass the bronchi, or the bronchi, tomato, you say it how you want, okay? And then the bronchioles, they branch. It's almost like a tree upside down that has like two big branches to it. And then in biology, and in medical stuff, for some reason, oftentimes when we have the longer word, like bronchioles instead of bronchi, it means the smaller thing. Kind of a weird thing to think about. So they branch, and then they rebranch about 4 times into finer tubes. And honestly, I want you to know the bronchi and the bronchioles. I'm not worried if you know exactly that they branch 4 more times. This is just like extra information. But that is related to what parts of our lungs we actually use at different times as well. And then it goes down to the terminal bronchioles, which are like the last, terminal means like the end, and then to the bunches of grapes, the alveoli, which is your actual respiratory surface. And then again, the alveoli, this is the picture we talked about before, but these are basically those air sacs at the end of each bronchiole, and this is the site of gas exchange. I promise I'm going to ask you that. Whoops. This is where it happens in humans. If you were a frog, your skin might help you out. Not for us. Okay? So, and there are millions of alveoli in each lung. It's pretty wild. It gets down there, and then there's these little capillaries, those tiny blood vessels wrapped around them, and that's where the gas exchange occurs. When you look at a slide of lung tissue, that's what that is on that far side there, the far right. It looks like styrofoam. It looks like a whole bunch of holes, and really, that's just a slice of that little grape, that alveolus, because it's this whole empty space, and then the capillary. But having all of these tiny little alveoli helps to make more surface area for that gas exchange to occur. So it is super important that we have those things. All right, I'm going to carry on. The key point of this is the alveoli, that's where we have the gas exchange. Now notice, on this picture of, and I'm probably going to get into another discussion here, but on this picture here of the bronchiole, there are little muscles wrapped around your bronchioles. And some people, like myself, I have, I can't remember, it's like environmental asthma. So I have like, if it's fire season, if it's allergy season for me. Once my lungs get triggered, it just doesn't stop for me for a bit. But what happens is those little muscles constrict and don't allow the air to make its way all the way, just a second, to the alveoli. So a person could be breathing, and I honestly tell you, there's nothing that I have been more panicked about is when you feel like you're trying to take in air and it's just not getting to that important part where the gas exchange happens, because you're breathing, you're doing what you should be doing, and it's not making it to that last tiny little bit. So just so you know, for people who are having asthma, or like even when you hear about like allergic reactions and how people can die from anaphylaxis or things like anaphylaxis or things like that, it could be that they're sitting there trying to breathe, but these things get blocked off and it's not actually exchanging the stuff. Yes?
So I get bronchial infections a lot, like bronchitis and other stuff.
Yeah.
It's genetic from my father, so he said.
Yeah, and bronchitis, itis just means an inflammation, so that's an inflammation of those bronchioles. We're going to talk about breathing and ventilation, basically how we take the air into our lungs. So this is just a general picture. So this is someone who's inhaling. And when you inhale, and we'll kind of write out the steps here in a moment, but when you inhale, those intercostal, which are basically the interrib muscles, contract and lift your rib cage up, and the diaphragm contracts and flattens down, and so it creates this kind of vacuum or space. And so the air is pulled in. It's called negative pressure breathing. The air is sucked into your lungs. When you exhale, over on the right, your rib muscles relax, your diaphragm relaxes, and it closes up that space, and the air comes out. So when we inhale is basically when everything is contracting. So there's two main types of breathing. There's something called positive pressure breathing, and I'm going to kind of skim over this, but an example for this would be like how frogs breathe. This is not including their skin, but actually when they breathe into their lungs. Or in humans, the time that we have positive pressure breathing, when are we forcing air into somebody's lungs? CPR. When there is an emergency and you are literally breathing into somebody's lungs, you're pushing air into someone's lungs, that's positive pressure breathing. It's when it's getting forced or pushed into the lungs. Negative pressure breathing is when we create a vacuum by creating a space, and then that's how the air flows in. This is like standard human breathing. And honestly, even like standard mammal breathing. Okay? So look at my little cheat sheet here for what I want to talk about next. So I'm going to show you real quick the positive pressure breathing stuff for the frogs, what I'm talking about, but then we're going to keep focusing on humans. But I do love frogs. You should love frogs too. Frogs are a great indicator that your environment's doing well because they're very fragile. Okay, so frogs, if they're sitting there chilling, oftentimes they just have their little nostrils and their eyes up out of the water, if you'll see them like the pond or lake or wherever else. But their nostrils will open, their external nares, and basically their mouth drops, and they do pull in air right there, but that's not them breathing. What happens then is they squeeze up the floor of their mouth, and they push the air, they push the air into the lungs. So because they push that air into the lungs, then that's positive pressure breathing. And if you watch frogs, you'll watch they'll be sitting there and you'll see their little throat go back and forth a couple times, because they are taking that same gulp of air that they just took in through their nares and moving it back and forth over their lungs a couple times. They don't generally want to open their mouth at all for breathing because it dries them out. You're losing some moisture for it too. So I have a real quick picture, or a little short thing that I clipped online of a frog breathing. So just watch and see if you can see this whole, like its chin moving back and forth. That's when it's pushing that air into its lungs. Oops, it's open on the side. So you can see its nares kind of opening every once in a while, and then it just, whoop, and now it's gone. I like that one because it disappears at the end. But basically, you can just see this kind of moving back and forth, back and forth. That's that frog pushing that same bit of air back and forth over its lungs.
The background's fake.
No, that's a pond.
Oh, okay.
It's because the comment was the background's fake. It's because it's super focused on I don't know for sure, I'm going to be honest, but I would guess that that's like a pond, like, see the water? I think, my guess is the frog jumped into the water.
I thought it was like a green screen.
Oh, yeah, green screen for the frog. All right. So this is the important part that I want you to know about for negative pressure breathing. This is what we do. Basically, when we are inhaling, your rib muscles contract. That brings the rib cage up and out, increasing the size of the chest cavity. These are all things I've already been saying. The muscles of the diaphragm contract and the diaphragm flattens, also increasing the chest cavity. I think of like an accordion, or I think we talked about this in one of my lab classes, like I don't know what it's called, the puffer. Like my grandparents had one right next to their like fireplace.
Bellows?
A bellows, there we go. I'm like the puffer thing. I don't know what it, like the bellows, okay? And then third one, and this is the weird thing, this is the one thing that relaxes. Your abdominal muscles relax, allowing for the space for your thoracic cavity to expand. Yes?
So hypothetically, if I go to the bathroom, would it also increase the size of my lungs can travel as well?
So if you go to the bathroom,
Yeah, like if you go pee and some stuff, because I know that your bladder is like around that area too. Would that also increase like all the oxygen you can take?
if I pee or if I do other things, then does that increase the size of the oxygen that I could take it to a degree? Interesting. I've never been asked that one yet.
For a marathon.
Oh, yeah. Marathon runners, folks that do the Ironman, they've lost some of their muscle capacity to control some of those things sometimes because it's just like your body's in shock. All right, I'm carrying on. Are we okay to move on? All right. Okay, all right, I'll wait. So it says thoracic cavity volume increases. The moral of the story is we increase the space in the thoracic cavity, and so that creates like a little vacuum and sucks the air into your thoracic cavity. Just check. Now, what happens when we exhale?
Everything goes out.
Everything goes out, basically the opposite of all of this. So just the opposite. Your rib muscles, what do? Now they're going to, if they were contracting before, they're going to relax. Diaphragm was contracted before, now it's going to relax. And maybe your abdominal muscles contract to like help squeeze it out, but this is like really minor. And then the thoracic cavity volume decreases, and it's basically pushing the air out of your body. It's pushing the air out. So it's pretty much the opposite of what we had going on before. I'm gonna, let's see here. I'll show you something. So this is basically another one, kind of picture those muscles between your ribs contracting, lifting up, the diaphragm kind of flattening out a little bit, so it creates a bigger space for the lungs, and then the opposite. I'm a picture person. I like to see lots of pictures. Okay, don't worry about notes for this one. I will show it to you, but I promise I won't ask you any questions for your exam. So the breathing control centers are in the brain. The pons and the medulla oblongata, which I hear in Adam Sandler voice in my head from The Waterboy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you might want to check it out. Okay, so the nerves basically from the medulla signal all this, but the wild thing about all of this is, what do you think it is that makes you breathe?
No oxygen.
Not no oxygen. We're dealing with oxygen and carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide.
It's too much carbon dioxide. So it's not lack of oxygen, it's too much carbon dioxide. So basically, they monitor, and I'm not going to ask you about this, but it basically, the brain monitors the pH of your blood. When you have a bunch of carbon dioxide in your blood, way back when we talked about your teeth, and I like to drink the fizzy waters, and there's the carbonated waters, right? Carbon dioxide, what happens? What does that turn into if it's the carbon dioxide is in water? It turns into acid. So if you have too much carbon dioxide in your blood, it's turning some of it more acidic, and so your brain keeps track of the pH for that. I'm kind of skipping fast through this. And then you have something called the pons, and that just basically like controls your rhythm for this. Now, we already talked about some of our stuff. Hyperventilation. When I was a kid, there were always people with paper bags, breathing into paper bags with like hyperventilation. If you watch old sitcoms and things, this was like one of those things that you did. Hyperventilation is like you are driving off, you're getting rid of too much carbon dioxide. So your body pH isn't right. So basically what happens is you stop breathing. You were like breathing too much, and so then your body stops breathing in order to activate the control center. Vice versa. What happens, please don't do this, but what happens if you hold your breath super, super long time?
You kind of fall, it kind of turns black almost.
Yeah, because you know what your body's doing? It's saying, this fool does not know what he's doing. I'm going to shut this down and restart. And so that is when you hold your breath too long. This was there was a little girl down my block. This was like her party trick. She'd hold her breath until she passed out. Don't do it. Not a good idea. Basically, the passing out is like your body, your brain's like, all right, we're going to stop this nonsense. This person is just not, we're going to reset, start the breathing again. Yes?
Is that like at my boarding school, there was kids who did, they called it like space monkeys or mellies, but they would like basically purposely have someone choke them out or like hold their own breath, and it would like make you almost like high feeling, I guess.
Again, something I'm so boring I don't know about, but yeah, it's a weird thing. Don't do it. Okay, breathing is good. Breathing is good. Yes.
The people that like, I don't know, the little girl is holding her breath all the time, pass out, or people that like do martial arts, they get choked out. Does it cause brain damage if you're losing too much oxygen?
Well, think about that. Yeah, you're starving your brain of oxygen for a certain chunk of time. Not good, my friend. All right, random thing here, just so you know, very little oxygen dissolved in your liquid blood. This is a slide of what blood looks like. There's little parts of blood. There's actually plasma. These purple things are actually white blood cells that have been stained, but most of them are going to look like these nice little jelly donuts, the red blood cells. Red blood cells and having hemoglobin allows your blood to hold more oxygen than it should. Our blood, if you don't have hemoglobin, can only hold about 15% of the oxygen that it does. Now, we mentioned this or talked about this a little bit the other day, carbon monoxide poisoning. Carbon monoxide, your body, it's not your fault, your hemoglobin has a huge affinity for carbon monoxide, 250 times more. It would rather hold on to carbon monoxide than oxygen. So having this, see these little oxygen molecules, they kind of like get tucked away, hidden in the hemoglobin. And so it's almost like the oxygen doesn't count for the concentration gradient for diffusion. It's almost like it doesn't count, it's not seen. So more oxygen comes in, and then it covers it up, more oxygen comes in. But what happens is if you end up with carbon monoxide, hemoglobin has a 250 times more likely to take up carbon monoxide than oxygen. And then carbon monoxide doesn't leave. It stays there in the hemoglobin. And so while the red blood cells are carrying that carbon monoxide, they can't carry oxygen. You're still breathing like normal, but what you're breathing, what your body is holding on to is the carbon monoxide, not the oxygen. So, and this is, I know someone who's had a family member, they were having construction done at their house and they died. Somebody died of carbon monoxide poisoning. Carbon monoxide is odorless, tasteless, doesn't have a color to it, you can't see it. So that's why lots of times they'll say to put like a carbon monoxide alarm in your house, or to like not cook on like your own little camp stove in an enclosed space kind of a thing. It comes from basically incomplete combustion of gases. Okay, incomplete combustion of gases. So that's carbon monoxide, no good. Yes?
Is there any way to get out carbon monoxide out of your red blood cells?
So basically you have to have a whole lot of oxygen. It just takes time. And usually when people are sick with carbon monoxide poisoning, some of the symptoms are headache, nausea, like you're just feeling like people are just tired, not feeling well. I think that's what the one baseball pitcher's son, they say maybe, and I don't know, I'm picking something like died in Costa Rica at a hotel, something like that. They all were feeling sick. They all thought they had the flu. And then this teenager, he ended up dying of carbon monoxide poisoning, I believe. I apologize if that's incorrect. But basically, like you're dizzy, you don't know what's going on. If you're feeling those things, especially like at a hotel, an unfamiliar place, get outside, get some air, see if that makes you feel better. But it's just a time spent in the good air. Yes?
Do you think like actually it hurts your lungs or your hand? Because I know you can't necessarily tell, but like when you're at the point of nobody can like help you at that point, do you think you start to like, in a sort of sense, like actually feel like you're drowning?
I don't know. Like the question is, does that hurt your lungs, or do you feel like you're drowning if you're at that point? I don't know. I don't ever want to know. But I would imagine, I think people that are experiencing carbon monoxide poisoning don't realize that that's what it is, because it doesn't feel like the stress of your lungs. Because basically, your lungs are still working. The problem is in all of the rest of your body that's not getting the oxygen that it needs. So I don't really know. Super downer. Okay, so be careful. Carbon monoxide alarms are a good thing. And then I had my vaping stuff, but we already chatted about that. We are done with respiratory system. I want to show you a wee bit on circulatory system, okay? It's okay if you just say no, too bad. I'm still doing it. Okay. All right, let's see here. Let's see, circulatory system stuff. And I'm glad we chatted about these things. And it's, like we're supposed to talk about what you want to talk about for this class too, like things that might be interesting. I want to like lay the foundation for some of the circulatory system stuff, and then we will continue with that on Friday. So basically, circulatory system, we're only going to have Friday and Monday to do it. So be ready. Circulatory system. I will do like the circulatory system like highlight reel. Circulatory system. It's like your body's freeway system to deliver stuff and to get rid of other things. And because I teach zoology too, I always want to show you what the other animals do. Basically, we're pretty fancy, mammals and birds. We have 4 chambered hearts. You have the atria right and left, and the ventricles right and left. And this makes it so that our blood goes to the lungs to pick up the oxygen, comes back to the heart, and then it goes from the heart out to the body, back to the heart, and then to the lungs. So it does these 2 loops. Some things, like fish, most fish, have 1 loop. They have only a 2-chambered heart, and it goes to the gills, around to the body, and then back to the heart. Which is cool, except that they don't have like as high pressured of a circulatory system. So I do want you to know this. 6 basic functions of the circulatory system. It does more than just deliver oxygen. That's like our first one, oxygen and carbon dioxide. But also your circulatory system is what delivers the nutrients. That's how your tippy toes and your fingers and all of your muscles, that's how they get like the sugars they need, the nutrition they need, all of that is being delivered by your blood. That's actually what makes us to be able to grow. So like animals to grow large, to do a whole bunch of complex functions is because this is being delivered all around. Collect metabolic wastes. So that's kind of like get rid of the carbon dioxide. Metabolic, remember, just means like the reactions of the body. So this is like we want to get rid of carbon dioxide, urea. That's when like the body breaks down proteins. And that actually then goes to the kidneys to be made into urine to make its way out of your body. Aids in the regulation of body temperature. I am perpetually pink. I run warm. Like I always, and Why does that make me perpetually pink, aside from possibly getting sunburned periodically, which I try not to do? Yes?
Because your blood vessels open up.
Yeah, I'm vasodilated, that's what it's called. My blood vessels are opened up close to the surface in order to try to cool me down. Basically, it's a weird thing. When you're really cold, what happens to your blood? Yeah, it's like your fingers will go white or blue, and your blood stays in your core. It stays along right here. So that's when people, when they get frostbite, it's going to be on your extremities, your fingers, your toes, your ears, your nose, things like that, because the blood is not flowing there. It's trying to maintain that temperature in the inside. So body temperature stuff, most definitely. Also, combat disease agents. What part of your circulatory system does that?
White blood cells.
White blood cells. You basically have, there are multiple kinds of white blood cells, but I picture them as like little Pac-Man varieties, which if you don't know who Pac-Man is, I'm feeling so old. I got my Waterboy reference that some people know about Pac-Man. All right, so we need to think about this thing. But Pac-Man basically chomping around on the things, the foreign invader stuff. And then distribute hormones. Hormones are just chemical messengers. So they need to go around all over the body. Adrenaline makes you anxious. Testosterone, estrogen. There's all sorts of different hormones. Insulin, glucagon, like all kinds of different things that need to be distributed. So the circulatory system does a whole lot more than just oxygen and carbon dioxide. This relates to the digestive system because all of those nutrients that we just got, those monomers that got picked up from the ileum, there's a whole bunch of mesenteric arteries right there, and even you have the posterior mesenteric arteries on the rectum. All of that's delivering this stuff to the liver to get checked out. The liver disperses it then around the body, wild through the circulatory system. Yes?
We'll probably get into this, but the pathway of the blood going from the heart to the capillaries and then circulating back, does it stop like on the highway where it like...
It's not technically a dead end. It basically goes, so arteries are the blood vessels that carry the blood away from the heart. It doesn't mean high oxygen, low oxygen, it just means away from the heart. So artery goes out, away, then it becomes arterioles, and then finally it becomes capillaries, and now as it starts to come back, then it becomes venules and veins and back to the heart.
And then the distribution of the nutrients happens wherever.
At the capillaries. The little small things. So like along the aorta that's coming off of the heart, you're not getting any of these basic functions. That heart is like I-90 plus. Okay, it's like it's like super streaming along past there. The coronary arteries, that's like a little bypass that's coming right off of I-90 and looping back around so that the area in the heart can now get some of the nutrition and oxygen and all of that stuff. And the coronary artery, we saw that between the ventricles, it actually branches into smaller little things, the capillaries. The capillaries are where you have that exchange. And I'm out of time. So be ready, but realize I might edit what we're doing for the circulatory system for Friday and Monday. Thank you for your questions.